Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for Salesforce.org Architect Academy, where we're going to talk about strategies for connecting Marketing Cloud and Salesforce on our first Trailhead Live Architect Academy session. Of course, before we start out, we're going to go with our forward-looking statement, and we're going to take the time to read through every line on this and study it. Or more easily, I can tell you that don't make any purchases based on what you hear today. Only make sure you only buy things that are already for sale. Again, thank you to everybody for joining us. This is our first Architect Academy on Trailhead Live, like I said. A little bit easier scalable platform from the way we were doing things previously. And for everybody who has been with Architect Academy for a while, appreciate you moving over and checking us out over here, and looking forward to doing this going forward. A little bit of background about Architect Academy for anyone who isn't familiar. We actually have a mission that we're trying to increase the success of our .org customers and partners, actually, by increasing the number of experts and people who have architect level knowledge in the nonprofit higher ed and K-12 space. We do that through a variety of different in-person events, which I know right now we haven't been doing a lot of lately because of current conditions, but we're doing a lot more virtual events. And we have a number of blogs and white papers that we're also publishing. And we also have a group in the Power of Us Hub that if you're not a member of, there's an Architect Academy Roundtables group that you can join and get updates on any future virtual events we have similar to this one. My name is Tom Leddy. I'm the director of our EDU services advisory team. Joining me is Julia Taylor, who's the senior manager of our Marketing Cloud advisory services team. Gokul Seshadri, who is a senior principal customer success architect on the Marketing Cloud side, and Brad Shapiro, who's a principal customer success architect on the Marketing Cloud side. And I'm going to turn it over to Brad to speak about how a connected experience between Salesforce and Marketing Cloud will benefit your organization.
Thanks, Tom. Happy to be here. So constituents today expect a seamless experience across whatever channel or team at your organization they may be interacting with. So someone may come onto your website and then place a phone call to a service representative. And it's important for that service representative to understand where that person has been, the information that they've seen, the forms that they may have submitted, so that they can provide the right information based on that context. And then during that conversation, they may learn things about that constituent that would then be able to be delivered via email or on a website, to customize their experience afterwards. So it's important that we think about how to connect all the information that we have about somebody to provide the best possible experience. And if you go to the next slide, Tom, there are some key features of Marketing Cloud Connect that help break down the barriers between teams and channels. So on the left side, you see the sales and service and community cloud. So we have contacts, lead, and users. We have any CRM object. And on the right side, you see Marketing Cloud and the different pieces that sync back and forth. So let's just look at the top box. We have the ability to message contacts from Marketing Cloud. So any data point that's in Salesforce can be immediately leveraged in Marketing Cloud. We have the ability then, after the email is sent, to send tracking data back into Salesforce. And that's in near real time as well, so that on the contact, lead, or user record, we can see how people are engaging with our marketing communications. When we think about Journey Builder and designing experiences through the Marketing Cloud, we can pretty much grab any object, any data point that's in Salesforce in real time, and use that to craft our Journey Builder canvas, and then send certain activities back into Salesforce. So Marketing Cloud Connect comes with these features out of the box. And while it's possible to build these in with custom integrations, this is really a turnkey way to get at all these great features. So the purpose of our talk today is to discuss how to unlock these features and some of the key prerequisites. Tom, if we go to the next slide. Before we get into the details, it's just, here are a couple more use cases that we like to highlight. So the data streams feature of Marketing Cloud Connect really lets us synchronize all that data every 15 minutes. So you can imagine, instead of a daily API, or daily feed, or some custom API or integration, it's really just that default 15-minute sync that unlocks a lot of value. We can also see campaign data in the CRM. So we want to be able to report on how many people were sent the email, how many people opened and clicked, and this is a really easy way to do that through Marketing Cloud Connect. Updates in CRM, if we need to create a task for somebody or change a piece of information based on how somebody's engaging with emails, also very easy. CRM originated journeys, think about that event invitation, that when we add someone to a list or change something about their status, we can trigger them on a journey. And then frequency management. Against all touch points, we want to see how many emails they've gotten, how many phone calls they've asked us for, and we can summarize those into a number, a calculation to determine, when is the best time to send to them. So just a couple of use cases to present some of the value of Marketing Cloud Connect to the business. So at this point, we'll start to get into the technicalities and the prerequisites, and I'll hand it over to Gokul to introduce this part.
Thanks, Brad. So we are talking about connecting the clouds, two clouds, the sales cloud or the service cloud, which is represented on the left-hand side, and the marketing cloud, which is on the right-hand side. And we are talking about using a product called Marketing Cloud Connector to integrate these clouds. But there are a few things to keep in mind in terms of how we are synchronizing this data and how we are using. And there is one vital and fundamental prerequisite which this architecture needs to meet in order to make the best use of this architecture. Any system, not just CRM, even a simple database which is storing customer data, would typically allocate some kind of an alphanumeric unique identifier to each customer. Any student information system or any database, right? In case of Salesforce, the CRM generates a 15-digit ID for each contact or lead or person account that it stores. Okay, we can call it like a Salesforce record ID or typically a Salesforce ID. And this is alphanumeric. This is generated by the system and maintained by the system. Now, when we talk about these two worlds integrating together, we want to make sure that the way we identify customers in Salesforce CRM is consistent with Marketing Cloud. In other words, in this example, the 15-digit ID, which Salesforce is allocating to a customer called John Doe, in this case, it's a contact record, but it could be a lead record as well. We want to carry forward that unique identifier to Marketing Cloud and start using that Salesforce ID as the contact key in Marketing Cloud. So this concept of identifying each customer uniquely slightly changes between these two worlds. As I said, in the CRM world, it's the Salesforce record ID or the 15-digit Salesforce ID, right, or the contact ID in this case. When you come over to Marketing Cloud, there are two keys. The first one is called the contact key, and the second one is actually the subscriber key. And for this whole mechanism to work best, we need to make sure that the Salesforce ID is what is being used as the contact key in Marketing Cloud, and that eventually becomes the subscriber key. The reason why we need to ensure that explicitly is that if we are not careful, this integrity may be disturbed. Okay. So what happens is when we set up Marketing Cloud in a typical configuration, the data starts flowing in from left to right, and it's very important. Okay. The key CRM data, in this case, it's a contact information along with the demographics, subscriptions, and so many other things, right? It flows from left to right into Marketing Cloud, and you cannot really edit this data in Marketing Cloud. Okay, so it's stored. And the Marketing Cloud Connector ensures that the Salesforce ID is automatically recognized as the contact key. This happens automatically when you set up this connection properly. And the moment you start emailing John Doe, that is when the subscriber key is created for the first time. Okay, so in this case, if you start using the contact key as the subscriber key, then the integrity is maintained. So in all these three worlds, the 15-digit key uniquely identifies John Doe, in which case the data is integrated, and the way you look at John Doe in CRM is consistent with the way you look at John Doe in Marketing Cloud. And you can connect these two pieces of data to have a holistic view of the customer engagement. If you go to the next slide. For this to happen, we need to make sure that the customer identifiers are actually generated in CRM only, because this capability of generating contact IDs rests on the left-hand side of this world. Okay, which means you have to import every single contact or lead or whatever, right, to whom you want to email first into CRM, and then transfer the data over to Marketing Cloud. Marketing Cloud will still give you options to import data directly without going through the CRM. But if you do that, obviously your contact key will be challenged, and eventually your subscriber key will also be disturbed. For example, in this case, right, earlier we highlighted how the Salesforce record ID, which was generated in CRM, passes over to Marketing Cloud. It is automatically recognized as a contact key and so on. Now, suddenly, if people start importing, say, an Excel or some kind of a flat file into Marketing Cloud directly, maybe through FTP or whatever, what will happen is this 15-digit ID is not available to those external data, right? And it's quite possible that the same customer called John Doe is also entering through this Excel. And in this case, the customer key can very well become the email ID of that person, in this case, John Doe. So which means you are now identifying John Doe using the email ID on one side and as well as the 15-digit ID on the other side. In other words, you have created duplicates of the same customer. So this disturbs the whole ecosystem, and you will not get a holistic view of what your customer, what your engagement was with John Doe. So this is something that we want to avoid. And what we need to make sure is any contact or any subscriber to whom you want to communicate with, you need to get them into CRM first. There are several ways to import data into CRM directly, and then port them over with the 15-digit ID into Marketing Cloud, and then continue. This way, the integrity of data is maintained throughout the ecosystem. Now, if you can go to the next slide, Tom. We are now going to illustrate a couple of scenarios discussing the data exchange, and I want to hand over to Brad to discuss scenario one.
Thanks, Gokul. Yeah, so Gokul's introduced the importance of the subscriber key in Marketing Cloud being the same as the contact ID in Salesforce. And so this first scenario is what I would consider the easiest scenario to find yourself in, which is that you are new to both Salesforce, Sales Cloud, and Marketing Cloud. And perhaps you're a new customer and you haven't really gotten started in either of these, and you're thinking long-term about using Sales Cloud more, but you need to get Marketing Cloud going right away to send emails. So what we recommend in this scenario is really to get your data into Salesforce at the beginning, so that we don't find ourselves in a situation later on where we have to change the keys to match what's in Sales Cloud. So while it may seem counterintuitive to start bringing data into Salesforce if you're not really using it rather than Marketing Cloud, this is really the best way to set that stage for long-term scalability. So even if it's just importing the list of emails and their first names and last names, get it into Salesforce and let that data then flow over to Marketing Cloud via the native connector, so that you can start to use those features from day one or whenever you're ready to do that without having to change anything. So the next scenario gets a little bit more complicated, and Gokul, I'll hand it off to you to cover this one.
Sure. So whatever scenario Brad illustrated in the earlier slide, it may not be possible in all organizations. It's especially when the marketing effort is being pioneered by one team, whereas the CRM is being engineered by a different team. It's quite possible that the team which is leading the marketing efforts might think, why bringing CRM into picture in the first place? After all, I'm trying to do marketing. So why not start up with Marketing Cloud, just start emailing a bunch of folks and things like that? It's very typical, because it might take a much longer time to bring CRM into picture. There are many stakeholders involved and things like that. So some executives might think, let's start off with Marketing Cloud first. And you might be one of those customers who just started off with this effort, or you might be considering this. So here are some of our recommendations in this scenario. Tom, if you could move to the next slide. Rather than going for a full-blown Salesforce CRM, our recommendation would be to just start off with a bare-bone CRM, knowing that the actual CRM implementation is going to come somewhere down the line. So the bare-bone CRM is just a skeleton, right? It's not the quote-unquote real CRM which actual business users are going to use, but it is just a system which is going to generate these 15-digit IDs for all the customers to whom you're going to email or message or whatever, right? The purpose of this is to avoid a lot of rework down the line, because if you start doing the imports directly into Marketing Cloud without even involving Salesforce CRM, then what's going to happen is you are going to get into this problem of some other unique IDs for your customers in Marketing Cloud. Later on, when CRM starts up, it's going to generate the 15-digit ID, and you have this whole mess of migrating data and a lot of rework. So in order to avoid that, it's best to just lay down a very simple CRM implementation. You need not even have a lot of users into this system. It's just meant for hosting and hosting your basic customer data and generating this 15-digit IDs. And then establish the Marketing Cloud connector so that the data passes over to Marketing Cloud, and you have this. Now you have the 15-digit ID for John Doe. You can continue later on when other teams are ready. You can invest more time into your CRM and then make it like a full-blown. In this case, you don't have any rework because you are already generated these IDs, and the way you identify a customer is consistent between Marketing Cloud and the CRM. And you can work with your AEs in terms of how to start off with a bare-bone CRM. Okay. You have a lot of options like data loader to import data into CRM, like one time or in a consistent manner. You have a lot of options. And start synchronizing the records, as I said, using Marketing Cloud Connector. In case you had started off with this approach already, like maybe you're 2 months or 6 months into this, and you're now wondering, if this is the recommendation, what to do now. So our recommendation would be to take stock of the situation. And if you think you're going to invest more and more time into this, better start off with the CRM and then rebuild some of the automations before you become too embedded into your Marketing Cloud investments. Start off with the CRM and then connect, and then maybe you need to adjust the SQL queries a little bit to source the data from the synchronized data extensions instead of your localized data extensions. You may have a little bit of work, but even here, even if you have traveled already in this path, it's still worthwhile to correct before it becomes, before you spend like 2 or 3 years into Marketing Cloud independent instance. So over to you, Brad, to discuss scenario 3.
So let's say you find yourself in a scenario where you have Marketing Cloud and Sales Cloud completely separate from each other, no connector in place, and you have been using Marketing Cloud where you've been importing data either from another system or directly via CSV files. And so your subscriber key is some ID other than the contact or lead ID in Salesforce. We've learned previous to this that we won't be able to take advantage of any of the connector benefits, so we have to fix this. What are our options? And Tom, if we go to the next slide, I'll speak through some of the options here. Really 3 options. The first is what we refer to as extract and delete. So all those contacts that are currently in Marketing Cloud, we want to extract all the engagement data that we may have about that individual. At the most basic level, at least, whether they're subscribed or unsubscribed. Then we may want to export, engagement history to tell us how many emails they've been sent, if they've opened it, all that good stuff. Let's get that out of Marketing Cloud, and then let's run a kind of matching process, or let's import them into Salesforce. So we can either append some of that data onto their Salesforce record, or at the very least, just kind of match that existing ID with their Salesforce record. Once we've got that match and the data extracted, we can safely delete those subscribers from the Marketing Cloud and basically start fresh. So we bring in all the new contacts with their correct contact ID. And if we want to, target people based on email history in the past year before we did that, we have the data to bring that into Marketing Cloud and match it up. But at this point, we've extracted all that good data, we've deleted them, we've started fresh. The second option is what's called subscriber key migration. And this is a titled services option provided by the Salesforce professional services team, wherein you basically skip the extract step, and there's the services engagement kind of goes behind the scenes of Marketing Cloud to replace that subscriber key. It does, it's a bit more streamlined in that we don't have to take out the engagement history and find the match ourselves, but we do need to pay for this option, and it does take some time to achieve. So I like to recommend extract and delete if you have people on your team that are, familiar with SQL and can, extract that data and, go through those steps. If you don't have those skills in-house, definitely pursue the subscriber key migration option with Salesforce Professional Services. Finally, you could just leave it as is, which is an option, and that's why it's on here, but it's not a good option. This would basically be that, we have 100 subscribers in Marketing Cloud with their old IDs, and then we bring in 100 new subscribers with the new ID. Well, we have the same people in there twice. And we know that Gokul was in there with subscriber key 123, and he opened 25 emails, but now he's in there with subscriber key 456. We have no way to associate those things on an ongoing basis. We could write SQL queries to kind of combine the data. But the real big thing is that we have duplicate contacts, and that increases our contact count, which does have consequences with regard to pricing and Marketing Cloud contracts come with a contact limit, and we don't want to exceed that if we don't have to. So an option is to just bring everything in and mash it up within Marketing Cloud, but not the best option for most people. Okay. Back to you, Gokul.
Yep. So scenario 4 is no CRM in the picture, and you're just using Marketing Cloud as it is. And probably you're happy with it. You're importing your data through Excel or some kind of integrations. You're running your marketing journeys and be done with it, right? So why even bother about CRM, right? If you can go to the next slide, Tom. The reality is, even though you are not invested in Salesforce CRM, you are having some system for holding your customer data. And the question you need to ask is, how do you understand the holistic customer engagement between your customer between your service center, between your contact center, whatever, or between and marketing engagements, right? Across these systems, what's your totality of understanding with regard to your customer? Are you going to send a commercial email to a customer who just raised a service case with you, severity one service case? You don't want to email them, things like that. So certainly there are a lot of benefits in involving a CRM, even though you're happy with your marketing as it is. You can consider making use of the Salesforce.org Power of 10 licenses or any other complementary offering that we offer for NGOs and higher eds to set up just a bare bones CRM like we discussed in scenario 2. Just stand it up. You may not consider using the full-blown CRM features today, but down the line, as your usage increases, as you start understanding a 360 view of your customer engagements and marketing and so on, you can start using it, or you can leave it with a bare bone implementation. That's up to you and the growth you are seeing. If in case you consider CRM down the line, with this bare bone CRM will save you a lot of time in terms of review. You can avoid all the subscriber key migrations and other things that Brad was talking about. So the recommendation is to make use of a bare bone CRM just for centralizing contact IDs, even though you may not have any immediate need for a proper Salesforce CRM. For scenario 5, over to you, Brad.
Yeah, come off mute. Okay. So you may find yourself using a CRM that is not Salesforce, and obviously you would not be able to take advantage of the native connector features in this scenario. So what we recommend here is really to begin using the Salesforce CRM as quickly as possible. Going back to one of the earlier scenarios of just using a bare bones Salesforce org to get the key, as soon as you can start doing that, the better. It'll really set you up for long-term success. But if you don't have that option, it's equally as good to just start bringing your data into Marketing Cloud from that other CRM to do the cross-channel messaging. Unfortunately, you'd have to build some of this integration and the features that we covered at the beginning from scratch. So like I said, we do recommend that you kind of get into the Sales and Service Cloud environment as soon as you can. But we do find people in this scenario, and it's not a terrible option to just start bringing the data into Marketing Cloud and then revisit scenario 3 when you do have Sales or Service Cloud in the mix. Yeah. So I think we can keep going to the next slide. And Tom, I think you're going to wrap us up here.
Yes, thanks. That was great information. And I know a lot of our customers struggle with this as far as what's the right order to implement, and what are my options if I've already got Salesforce stood up and Marketing Cloud stood up separately, or if I need to bring a new org in, or whatever the variety of scenarios. So thanks for laying those all out. And one of the other things that I want to actually mention is that we have a white paper that goes even further detail into all of those different scenarios, along with some more information about what a subscriber key is and why it's valuable, along with some other, some general journeys about how to get started out with Marketing Cloud Connect. There's a really good trailhead, and there's our Salesforce Marketing Cloud group in the Power of Us Hub, and also the Architect Academy Roundtables group, which you should definitely join if you're not a member of already. And these links are all available in the trail mix that you should be able to find in the related resources section down below. So thank you again to our excellent presenters, and thank you again to everybody who attended. We're looking forward to continuing on with Architect Academy here in the coming months, and I believe the topic for next month is going to be building an integration strategy. So looking forward to that discussion as well. And thank you, everybody.